They thought it'd be funny to sign up the quietest girl in school to sing as a prank. But when she stepped up to the mic, what came out left the entire gym standing in shock. Jania Holloway had learned early on how to stay quiet. At 12, she already knew how to avoid attention, how to shrink herself so no one would bother looking. At Meadowbrook Middle School in Toledo, Ohio, being invisible was the only thing that made the days bearable. Her thrifted jeans were always a bit too short, and her hoodie had a tear in the sleeve she never bothered to fix. Every morning, she kept her head down, hoping to make it from the front doors to homeroom without catching someone's glare, or worse, their laughter. Most days she did, but not always. "Hey, Holloway," one of the girls would whisper just loud enough. "You planning to eat lunch this time, or still pretending you're fasting?" They'd laugh. She wouldn't look back. There was a kind of rhythm to it all. One she didn't enjoy, but one she understood. Blend in, stay silent. Don't feed the fire. She'd sit in the back of every class, eyes on her paper, answers correct, but never loud enough to earn praise. Her voice barely carried past the second row even when called on. Some teachers noticed, others didn't, and the ones who did rarely knew what to do. "Jenny so quiet," they'd write on progress reports. "Very bright, but hesitant to speak." No one asked why, and even if they had, she wouldn't have known how to explain it. Because it wasn't just the teasing, it was the weight of always feeling like she didn't belong. Her clothes, her shoes, her silence. They made her a target without her ever opening her mouth. But she wasn't weak. She was just tired. At home, things weren't much easier. The two-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother, Charlene Holloway, was clean but worn down. The kind of place where the heater rattled when it kicked on and the fridge door had to be propped shut with a chair leg. Her mom worked overnight shifts at a nursing home, every night, and Jania would often fall asleep to the low sound of gospel music playing from a clock radio her mom kept in the kitchen. Still, there was love in that home. Real love. They didn't talk much during the week, but when they did, it meant something. On Saturdays, when her mom wasn't working a double, they'd sit at the kitchen table and eat toast with cinnamon sugar and laugh about old memories. And when Jania mentioned anything about music, anything at all, her mother's face would light up. "You've got your daddy's ear," Charlene would say, a soft smile pulling at her tired cheeks. "But you've got your own voice, baby." That voice. Jania kept it tucked away like a secret, something sacred. She'd sing when no one was home. In the bathroom with the water running, in her room, face buried in a pillow. Not loud, never loud. Just enough to feel the music moving through her. And she was good. But no one knew. She wasn't even sure how good she really was. Just that it made her feel like she could breathe. That's why, when her name appeared on the talent show sign-up sheet taped to the cafeteria wall, she stared at it for a full minute before moving. Jania Holloway. Vocal performance. It was written in messy, slanted letters. Not her handwriting. Laughter echoed behind her. Two boys near the vending machines had their phones out, pretending not to look. A group of girls whispered into each other's shoulders. They thought it was funny. They thought she'd be too scared. But they didn't know she sang. They didn't know how much she needed to. She took a slow breath, tore off the bottom corner of the sheet, and walked away. But while they waited for her to crumble, Jania had already made a decision they never saw coming. It started with a bet. Two 8th grade boys, Troy Garland and Zeke Banner, sat in the cafeteria that Monday trading dares over who could pull the worst prank before the school year ended. The idea was petty, mean, but they didn't see it that way. To them, it was just something to do between math tests and gym class. "Put Jania on the list," Zeke had said, half laughing, half serious. "Tell everyone she's gonna sing." Troy grinned like it was genius. "Think she'll show?" "Of course not. She barely talks." That was the whole point. They made sure to write it by hand, messy on purpose, then slid it between two real sign-ups before taping it to the wall near the lunch line. The moment her name went up, whispers started flying. Kids stared. A few took pictures. Others just laughed quietly and shook their heads. It was a trap. Everyone knew it. Jania saw the list on Wednesday. She didn't ask questions, didn't confront anyone, She simply walked past the noise and took a mental note of the date. Friday, 6:30 p.m. Meadowbrook Middle Talent Night. She knew what this was. She wasn't stupid. But what they didn't know was that she'd already spent months, years really, singing alone. Her notebook was full of lyrics and verses she'd written after school while waiting for her mom to come home. There were harmonies in her head she couldn't explain to anyone, and melodies she made up while stirring spaghetti or folding laundry. So while they laughed and joked, Janya stayed quiet until Thursday morning. That's when Mrs. Landry, the school counselor, pulled her aside in the hallway. "Jania, sweetheart, can I talk to you for a second?" She nodded and followed her into the office, sitting in the same worn chair students always sat in when they were having a tough time. Mrs. Landry gave a kind smile, one that didn't quite mask the concern behind it. "I saw your name on the sign-up sheet. I just wanted to make sure that you really wanted to be a part of the show." Jania kept her voice even. "I do." Mrs. Landry paused, almost waiting for her to flinch. When she didn't, she leaned back in her chair and adjusted her scarf. "Well, all right. I think it's wonderful. I can't wait to hear you." But even she had doubts. You could see it in her eyes. Not cruelty, just worry. Jania had never raised her hand in class, never stayed after school, never even looked like she enjoyed being there. Now she was going to perform in front of everyone. By lunchtime, word had spread. "She's actually going to do it," someone whispered near the water fountain. "No way. I swear, Landry talked to her and everything." Phones came out again. A few kids started recording short videos. "Wait for tomorrow night, y'all," one girl said, barely holding in laughter. "It's about to be tragic." By the time Jania got home that night, she'd already made peace with what was coming. She poured herself cereal for dinner. There was no time to cook before homework, and sat at the kitchen table, flipping through her notebook. She didn't tell her mom about the prank. She didn't want sympathy. She just wanted to sing. Charlene worked late that Thursday, which meant Jania was alone until almost midnight. But that gave her time. Time to rehearse quietly in her room. Time to go over the lyrics one more time. Time to push away the fear that clawed at her stomach every time she imagined standing in front of all those faces. Because part of her was scared, but a bigger part of her was tired of hiding. And somewhere deep down, she knew this was her chance, no matter how it started. But Friday would show her that some people don't laugh nearly as hard once the joke turns around. There was something different about the house on Thursday night. It wasn't the size, still 2 bedrooms and a bathroom too small to turn around in. It wasn't the noise, just the steady drip from the kitchen sink, the same one they couldn't afford to fix yet. It was something else. Jania stood in front of the hallway mirror, holding her hair in a makeshift bun, deciding whether or not to wear it out. She wasn't sure if it mattered, but still, she stood there a while, looking, not at her clothes or her face, but at her eyes. She wanted to believe she could do this. Her mother walked in just after 11:00 p.m., still in scrubs, keys jingling in one hand, a plastic bag from Dollar General in the other. She looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from a bad day, but a long year. Still, the moment she saw her daughter standing in the hallway with that expression, part scared, part unsure, she set everything down and softened. "You all right, baby?" Jania hesitated. "Yeah." Charlene didn't push. She walked into the kitchen, placed the bag on the counter, and pulled out a slightly wrinkled white blouse and a black cardigan. "Got these on sale. I wasn't sure what you'd want to wear tomorrow. Thought maybe something simple." Jania walked over slowly and touched the blouse. It was lightweight and soft, the kind of thing her classmates would call basic, but to her, it looked almost perfect. "Thanks," she whispered. "You know," her mom started, voice low. "You don't gotta do this if you're scared." "I'm not. You sure?" Jania nodded. Charlene leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Then give me a little preview." "What?" "Sing something." Jania looked down at the blouse again, her fingers tracing the seam. I want it to be a surprise." Charlene raised a brow. "For me too?" She smiled. And for a moment, Jania did too. "Just wait," she said. Charlene didn't press again. She just kissed her daughter's cheek and said, "Then they ain't ready." After her mother went to bed, Jania stayed up another hour, practicing with her headphones in, mouthing the words in the dark. She didn't have a karaoke machine, no speakers, no backing tracks, just her phone and her voice. She chose Rise Up by Andra Day, not just because it was beautiful, but because it meant something. She'd listened to it on the bus during hard mornings and hummed it under her breath when people laughed too loud in the hallway. It wasn't just a song, it was armor. That night, she fell asleep with the lyrics in her head and the blouse laid carefully over the back of her chair. The next morning, the cafeteria was louder than usual. Posters for talent night were plastered near the front entrance. The list of performers had been printed out and posted next to the doors. Jania was fourth. Zeke and Troy were both in line for breakfast, pointing at the list and nudging each other. A girl with blue acrylics said, "Is she really doing it?" Loud enough for 3 people to turn, but Jania didn't flinch. She just walked past, holding her backpack close, face blank, voice quiet. In first period, her science teacher handed back tests. In second, they did vocabulary. She didn't speak unless called on. By third, her stomach hurt, not because of nerves, but because she hadn't eaten yet. Her mom had left $5 on the table, but she'd skipped breakfast anyway. Didn't want to feel too full. By the time school ended, the hallway chatter had shifted. Kids were half joking, half curious. One girl whispered, "She might actually be good." And someone else replied, "Yeah, right." Still, Jania didn't say a word. She went home, took a long shower, and sat on her bed in silence, cardigan pressed, hair brushed out. Her mom took the night off to be there. And when Charlene said, "You ready?" Jania only nodded. They walked out the door as the sun started to dip behind the apartments across the street. Neither of them said it out loud, but something about the air felt heavy. But what no one could guess was just how loud a quiet girl's voice could really be. The parking lot outside Meadowbrook Middle was more crowded than usual that evening. Cars squeezed into every corner, and some parents parked along the street just to make it on time. The school gym, usually echoing with the thud of basketballs and the shrill of whistles, had been transformed for talent night. Folding chairs lined the floor. A temporary stage stood at the front, with a microphone stand center stage and a long extension cord taped down to the floor in yellow strips. By 6 o'clock, the bleachers were filling fast. Jania sat backstage in a row of metal chairs along the wall, her cardigan buttoned, her hands folded in her lap. She could hear the murmurs from the audience. Parents greeting each other, kids calling out to friends, younger siblings whining for snacks. Someone from the drama club handed her a small paper number. Number 4, Jania Holloway, vocal performance. "Good luck," the girl mumbled. Jania gave a tight smile. Back in the crowd, Charlene Holloway found a seat near the back. She hadn't worn anything fancy, just a clean blouse, jeans, and her church flats. Her hair was pulled back and her purse sat on her lap like she was guarding something priceless. She scanned the program, circled her daughter's name with a red pen she kept in her wallet, and sat quietly, not saying a word to anyone around her. The show started with a drum solo. Then a kid did stand-up comedy that mostly involved impressions of teachers. The third act was a pair of friends lip-syncing to a viral song. The crowd clapped politely. Some laughed. A few scrolled through their phones. Then the MC stepped up again, a 7th grade girl in a sequined jacket. "Next up, Jania Holloway, vocal performance." There was a pause, an awkward one. And then, behind the curtain, Jania stood. Her palms were wet, her throat dry, her knees stiff. Still, she walked forward. Every step across the stage felt longer than the last. She didn't look at the crowd. Not at first. She just looked down, at the taped X on the stage floor, the mic cable coiled at her feet, the front row of kids already whispering. Zeke was there, Troy too. Their phones were up, recording. She could hear a few snickers. Someone coughed. A kid near the bleachers said, "This is going to be bad," loud enough for half the row to hear. But Jania didn't back down. She took the mic in both hands. Steady, careful, then looked up for the first time. The gym wasn't silent, but it was close. A few whispers still floated around. A rustle of programs, the buzz of gym lights overhead. Then she sang. No music, no track. Just her voice. It started small, soft, a breath of a note. But then something shifted. The tone deepened. Her pitch sharpened. The rawness in her voice wrapped itself around the words like she'd lived them. Because in many ways, she had. Every line trembled with weight. Every breath came from a place no one had seen in her before. By the third note, the laughter stopped. By the fourth, the phones lowered. By the fifth, the only sound in the room was her. She didn't move around the stage. She didn't have to. Her stillness pulled people in. Her voice carried further than anyone expected, reaching the back row, the corners of the gym, the teachers near the exit doors. Even the janitor paused his mop outside the hallway to listen. Charlene sat frozen, hands gripping her purse. Eyes wide. She'd heard her daughter sing in snippets, in hums, through walls. But this wasn't just good. This was something else entirely. By the last verse, some parents had tears in their eyes. A few teachers exchanged stunned looks. The same kids who mocked her were now too stunned to speak. Jania held the final note for a beat longer than needed. Then she let go. The mic lowered. Her arms hung loose by her side. She didn't smile, didn't bow, just stood there, waiting. But before she could take a step back, something happened that no one, not even Jania, could have predicted. For half a second, there was silence. Not the awkward kind, not the one where people aren't sure whether to clap or look around. This one was different, like the whole room needed a breath before it remembered how to respond. And then, the applause came. It started with a single clap from the back. Then another. Then the sound swelled. Parents, students, teachers, everyone stood. Not in some rehearsed, polite way. They stood like they had to. Like sitting still didn't make sense anymore. Charlene Holloway was on her feet with both hands to her mouth. Her eyes were glassy and her fingers trembled slightly as she clapped. She wasn't crying out of sadness. This was something else. Pride, maybe, or shock. Mrs. Landry, standing near the side of the gym, stared with both eyebrows raised, hands clasped against her chest like she'd just watched someone fly. And in the front row, Zeke and Troy sat frozen, phones down, expressions blank. Troy muttered, "Yo, what just happened?" Zeke didn't answer. Jania stood on stage, motionless. She hadn't expected this. Not the cheers, not the tears, not the teacher from the back running up with a tissue in her hand, whispering, "You were incredible," as she walked her off stage. Back behind the curtain, someone handed her a water bottle. She didn't open it. Her hands were too shaky. A 7th grader leaned over and whispered, "You just shut the whole school up." Jania didn't smile. Not yet. She just sat down and stared at her shoes. The applause still rang in her ears. It didn't feel real, but she didn't cry. She wasn't ready for that either. In the gym, the show continued, but it didn't really matter who came next. No one was talking about the magician act or the kid doing yo-yo tricks. The audience was still in a daze. A kind of quiet reverence hung over the room. A few teachers gathered near the side of the stage. One of them whispered, "That girl, Jania. What grade is she in again?" "6th," someone replied. "No way, that voice." Another leaned in. "I've got a cousin who teaches vocal performance at the university. I should call her." Near the exit, a man with graying hair and a navy windbreaker had his arms folded. He wasn't a teacher or a parent. He didn't clap like the rest. He just listened, carefully. He turned to Mrs. Landry. "That girl, Holloway. What's her story?" Landry blinked. "Quiet kid. Keeps to herself. But..." She let out a breath. "We've all been sleeping on her." The man nodded. "I run a youth choir downtown. We offer training, competitions, scholarships. She needs to be in it." Landry looked stunned. "You serious?" "I wouldn't say it if I wasn't." Jania didn't know any of that. She sat backstage, still gripping the paper number in her lap. She hadn't told anyone she could sing. Not even her best friend in elementary school knew. But now, everyone knew. When the show ended, the curtain came up, and all the performers lined up on stage for a final bow. Jania stood in the middle. Some of the kids clapped for each other. Others leaned over to whisper things. One girl, Nia Jeffers, usually loud and slick with sarcasm, leaned toward Jania and said under her breath, "That voice didn't even sound like it came from you." Jania didn't answer. She didn't need to. They all heard it. As they walked off stage, more people reached out to her. One of the 8th grade teachers said, "You've got a gift, sweetheart." A mom she didn't know smiled and said, "I hope my daughter grows up to be as brave as you." But the one that stuck came from a janitor named Mr. Clyde, who had worked at the school longer than most of the staff. He didn't say much, just patted her shoulder and whispered, "Don't let this world make you small again." But even with the applause behind her, Jania had no idea how much her life was about to shift. This moment was just the spark. The next morning at Meadowbrook felt different. Not louder, not friendlier, just different. Jania walked into the building wearing the same hoodie she'd worn on Monday. She didn't feel taller, or prettier, or cooler. She still took the same route to first period, still carried her binder hugged to her chest, still sat in the back row. But this time, people looked at her. Not the way they used to. No smirks, no sideways glances meant to make her feel small. They looked at her like they were trying to figure her out. Like they were wondering how they'd missed what was right in front of them. Some nodded politely. Others just watched her pass without saying anything. Troy and Zeke avoided eye contact altogether. In homeroom, Mrs. Langford paused attendance and looked up. "By the way," she said, "amazing job last night, Jania. Truly." A few kids clapped automatically. One girl even turned and whispered, "You really can sing." Jania blinked. "Thanks," she mumbled, looking down. But the change wasn't just in the kids. By lunch, 3 teachers had asked her if she'd considered joining choir. One of them even pulled out a permission slip. The music teacher, Ms. Dawson, said she'd cleared space in her after-school program just in case Jania wanted to drop by. No pressure, just something to think about. It was overwhelming. At her locker, she found a folded note that simply said, "You were amazing. Don't let anyone dim your light." No name. Just neat handwriting and a heart drawn in the corner. She stared at it for a long time. Outside the cafeteria, Mrs. Landry called her over. "You've got a visitor," she said with a half smile. "Came here just for you." Standing next to her was the man in the windbreaker, the one from the show. "I'm Mr. Andre Colton," he said. "I direct the Northwest Youth Vocal Collective downtown. We offer free training for students with raw talent, and I think you've got a whole lot of that." Jania didn't know what to say. He continued, "I'd like to invite you to a workshop this Saturday. Just a few hours, nothing formal, but I think you could really grow with the right support." She looked at Mrs. Landry, who gave her a small nod. "I'll ask my mom," she finally said. "That's all I needed to hear." Mr. Colton handed her a card with a number and an address. "You have a voice that can move people." I don't say that often. As he walked away, Jania stood frozen in place, fingers gripping the card like it might disappear. That night, Charlene sat across from her at the kitchen table, with the same card resting between them. "You want to do it?" she asked. Jania nodded. "Then we'll figure it out. I'll drive you." The next few days rolled forward like someone had turned the volume up on her life. Teachers smiled more. Students waved or said hello. Even kids she'd never spoken to tried to talk to her about music. One of the girls who used to mock her in the cafeteria walked up during recess. "So, you sing?" she said, arms crossed, like it was still hard to say out loud. Jania kept her face calm. "Yeah, well, you were good. Like, real good." She turned and walked away before Jania could say anything, and that was fine. She didn't need validation from people who'd laughed at her 2 weeks ago. What mattered was that now, when she spoke, when she sang, people listened. On Saturday, she and her mom drove to the workshop, a small studio space inside a converted church building. There were 7 other kids there, each one talented in their own way. Mr. Colton worked with them all gently but seriously, showing them how to breathe through their diaphragm, how to project without yelling, how to sing like they meant it. When it was Jania's turn, he let her pick her own song. She chose a simple gospel melody, one her mom used to play on Sunday mornings when she was cooking and humming to herself. She sang it without fear this time. She didn't even look down, and when she finished, no one said a word. They didn't need to. But the real change wasn't in how others saw her. It was in how she started to see herself. By the following month, things Jania once only imagined had become part of her new routine. Every Saturday morning, her mom would drop her off at the choir workshop before heading to work. Mr. Colton always greeted her at the door with that same quiet nod. Inside, the other students had started warming up to her. They weren't fake about it. They asked questions. How she got her tone to sound so rich. How she learned to hold notes that long without formal training. She didn't know how to answer. "I just sing," she'd say, half shrugging, a little shy. But with each session, her voice grew stronger, and so did her confidence. Back at Meadowbrook, the buzz had cooled, but the respect lingered. No more prank sign-ups, no more snickering in the halls. Most of the time, people just let her be. But now, when she passed, they saw her. Really saw her. She joined the school's after-school choir at Ms. Dawson's request. And to everyone's surprise, including her own, she became a standout soloist. The first time she rehearsed with the group, the other students fell silent when she sang her part. By the second rehearsal, some were asking her for help with their notes. Not everyone loved it, of course. A few students rolled their eyes, muttered things like, "Guess she thinks she's special now." But that didn't bother Jania anymore. The difference now was that her worth wasn't measured by their approval. One afternoon, Troy tried to talk to her outside the library. "Hey, just wanted to say, what you did at the show was crazy. Like, actually good." She looked at him, blinked slowly, and said, "I know." Then she walked away. At home, Charlene noticed the change too. Her daughter, once quiet even at the dinner table, had started singing softly while cleaning dishes, humming in the car, asking to borrow her mom's old CD player just to listen to vocals she wanted to learn from. And one evening, Jania even asked if they could go thrift shopping for performance clothes. Charlene had to stop herself from crying in the middle of the store. "You want something fancy?" she asked, half joking. "Not fancy," Jania replied. "Just something that fits how I feel." They settled on a navy blue blouse with a slight shimmer to it, and black slacks that needed hemming. But to Jania, they felt like armor. That spring, the Northwest Youth Vocal Collective hosted a community concert. Every student had a chance to perform. Some did group numbers, others small duets. Mr. Colton asked Jania to close the show with a solo. "You ready for that?" he asked one morning during rehearsal. Jania didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I am." He watched her for a second. "You sure?" "I'm sure." The night of the performance, the venue was full. Families, neighbors, even a few local reporters who'd caught wind of the choir's rising stars. Charlene sat in the front row, wearing her church dress and clutching her daughter's program like it might blow away. When Jania walked on stage, she didn't look scared. She looked grounded, like she belonged there. She sang a song she wrote herself. A simple melody, the lyrics told a story about being laughed at, doubted, and rising anyway. About finding strength when nobody else sees it. About not being a joke. When the final note hung in the air, there was a stillness in the room, and then applause. Louder than anything she'd ever heard. A standing ovation. This time she smiled. This time she bowed. Later that night, in the car on the way home, her mom looked over at her and said, "You remember that girl who got signed up as a prank?" Jania grinned. "Yeah." Charlene reached over and gently squeezed her daughter's hand. "She's gone." But even as her world opened up, Jania hadn't forgotten the girl she used to be, because that's what kept her grounded. By summer, people outside Meadowbrook Middle had started to learn her name. A video of her talent show performance had quietly made its way online. Someone's parent had recorded it and posted it with a simple caption. She was signed up as a joke. No one's laughing now. The views didn't explode overnight, but they climbed steadily. Hundreds, then thousands. Then someone from the local news station in Toledo picked it up. Charlene got the call one Thursday afternoon while folding laundry. The reporter wanted to do a short segment. Just a 5-minute piece. Something uplifting. A local girl with a gift. A story people could root for. "I don't know," Charlene had said over the phone. "She's just a kid." But when she asked Janiyah about it, her daughter surprised her. "I want to," she said. They filmed the piece on a warm Saturday morning in the choir studio. Mr. Colton spoke about her talent. Charlene shared how she always knew her daughter had something special. And Janiyah? She answered every question clearly, calmly. When asked how she felt about being signed up as a prank, she didn't speak with bitterness. "It used to bother me," she said. "But if that hadn't happened, I probably never would have gotten on that stage." The clip aired on a Friday night. The following Monday, Janiyah's school inbox had messages from local music groups, student mentors, even a summer camp for young singers in Cincinnati. One message stood out. A voice teacher from a community college had seen her interview and offered to coach her once a month for free. "You've got what people spend years trying to find," he wrote. "I'd be honored to help you grow it." Still, none of that changed how she moved through the world. She didn't buy new clothes just to impress. She didn't suddenly start eating lunch at the popular table. She still rode the bus home, head against the window, earbuds in. But now, the voice in her ear wasn't someone else's. It was her own demo track, recorded with help from Mr. Colton's studio. She kept a folder of new lyrics in her backpack. Ideas scribbled in the margins of homework. Lines that came to her while walking down the halls. She sang them under her breath, refining them each day. At home, Charlene worked fewer overtime shifts, not because things had suddenly become easy, but because she didn't want to miss anything. She came to every choir show, took off work when Janiyah had her first solo competition in Dayton, and when the results came back, first place in her category. She framed the certificate and hung it in their hallway next to a photo of Janiyah holding the mic at talent night. There were still hard days. Some kids stopped being nice when the attention kept growing. One girl whispered too loudly during science class, "Guess singing makes you special now, huh?" Janiyah didn't answer. She didn't have to. When the teacher asked for volunteers to present, she raised her hand first. She spoke clearly. She didn't stutter, didn't rush. She made her point, answered questions, and sat down, leaving the girl who whispered looking unsure of what to say next. Her voice wasn't just for singing anymore. It was starting to show up in the rest of her life, too. That fall, she was invited to sing at a citywide youth event, a mix of students from public and private schools. A real stage, real lights, a full auditorium. Before the show, she stood backstage with a small group of other performers. One of them, a girl in a glittery red dress, looked over and asked, "You nervous?" Janiyah looked at the curtain, then back at her. "No, just ready," and she was. When her name was called, she stepped out slowly, took the mic, and faced the room. Hundreds of eyes, a spotlight hot on her face. Somewhere in the front row, her mom clapped slowly, wearing the same proud look she had since spring. Janiyah didn't fidget, didn't shrink, she just sang. But this time, she wasn't proving anyone wrong. She was proving herself right. By winter, Janiyah's name had become more than a memory from that one school talent show. She was invited to sing at holiday events, school assemblies, and even a Martin Luther King Jr. celebration at a local college. Her name would appear in small bold letters on flyers and programs. Sometimes it was spelled wrong, sometimes people didn't even know how to pronounce it, but once she sang, nobody forgot it. Still, she never chased fame. She didn't care about becoming a star. What mattered to her was the feeling. That moment when her voice filled a room and made people stop. When it reached someone in the back row who maybe felt invisible too. That's what kept her going. She'd walk through the school now and see younger students watching her, almost unsure whether to say hi or stay quiet. Some of them had that same look she used to wear. The look of trying to be small. She made it a point to speak to them. Just simple things. "You like music? You write stuff?" You sing at home? She never said it to sound wise or important. She just knew what it meant to have someone see you. One day, a teacher asked her to talk to a 6th grade class about courage. Not about her music, just about what it felt like to do something scary and stand through it anyway. Jania stood in front of the group and told them the truth. That night, she said, when I walked up to that mic, I thought I was going to fall over. Not because I didn't believe in my voice, but because I thought no one else would. I thought maybe they'd laugh again. Maybe they'd record me. But I did it anyway. Because I was tired of hiding. I just wanted to hear myself out loud. A few of the students nodded quietly. One girl raised her hand and asked what it felt like to hear everyone clapping. Jania paused, then smiled. It felt like I was finally standing in my own shoes. That sentence stayed with one of the teachers for weeks. She printed it and taped it to her classroom door. Other teachers asked her to come speak too. Not to brag, not to perform, just to talk. At home, Charlene would sometimes sit at the kitchen table and just watch her daughter move. Not performing, not being anyone's idea of a success story, just living. Doing homework, writing lyrics, humming while making a sandwich. And she'd think back to that wrinkled blouse she bought at the dollar store. That borrowed stage. That moment they both almost skipped. You did that, Charlene said one night as they watched one of Jania's new performances on her phone. You turned their joke into your microphone. Jania didn't say anything. She just reached over and held her mom's hand. Because she knew. She knew that what happened in that gym wasn't about revenge or proving something to the kids who doubted her. It wasn't even about one good performance. It was about a shift in how she saw herself, in how she stood, in how she used her voice, not just to sing, but to take up space, to be heard. And for anyone watching, anyone who's been counted out, laughed at, or ignored, maybe her story reminds them of something important. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You don't have to be noticed to be valuable. And sometimes, the very thing someone meant to break you becomes the reason you rise. So if you're holding something back, something real, something you know is part of you, don't wait for permission. Use it. Share it. Let them hear you. Because what happened to Jania Holloway could happen to any of us. And sometimes, all it takes is a microphone. Even one handed to you as a joke. If this story moved you, make sure to subscribe. More real stories like this are coming, and you won't want to miss them.